what your choices have been, and what karmic timelines and contracts you have journeyed. The light is calling for the reunification of all aspects of life in this realm now. It is calling for the cleansing of all polarities. It is calling for the rising of all sacred heart centers now. All are being summoned home to the greater light now.
Hi, and welcome everyone to Whole Soul Mastery's Live Well, Live Whole podcast series, and possibly Whole Soul School and Foundation might be a joint podcast host today. Let's just see where we journey, because we've got a lot to talk about, Paul, because there's so much energy that's really ripe right now. There's a lot of ripened energy, things coming to fruition, things coming to crescendos at the very least. And I should at least introduce myself. I'm Marie Moeller, and I'm an author, intuitive, and a cosmic messenger of Whole Soul Mastery. And our journeys into authentic, heart-centered quantum living. And I'm back again with Dr. Paul Panzica. We haven't podcasted in a while. I know. Hi, Paul. Thank you. It's been some time. We've both done a lot of journeying, and I'm really excited for this conversation because it's fresh. It's going to come straight from our hearts. It's not like we're functioning from a script. We're really just going to be speaking from our experience and the things that we see. And I have a reference point, your most recent article, which was you wrote about the Star of David and the fall equinox, but there's a lot of energies that you brought to the surface in your writings. And that can, of course, be found on your website at Beyond the Soul's Meridian. We'll put that link also at the end of the video and in the description. But I am so happy you're joining me. Number one, it's always so fun to journey with you because we really don't know where we're going to go. When I say it could be a Whole Soul School and Foundation podcast, it all depends on where we go, because that's a different audience. And yet the Color the Magic audience, the Whole Soul Mastery audience, are people who are much more awakened to some of the topics that we're seeing. And sometimes it's good to have a broad spectrum and share it with both, if I think that the Whole Soul School and Foundation audience will resonate with some of this, because it's where we're all going. It's relevant to all of us, but some people, aren't ready. So sometimes they need more breadcrumbs. Sometimes they need, more seeds planted before you get into some bigger conversations. So I'll have a sense after our conversation today if we're going to share with both audiences or not. But the truth is, everybody's awakening. We're all called to this point of awakening. We are in the ascension times. We're talking about this ripening of energies. And at the same time, like when you have ripening, if we think of fruit, overripe fruit begins to compost, right? It begins to decay. And so we have this cycle of endings and beginnings happening simultaneous. And I think never before has humanity really, on a global scale, whether people are fully conscious of this or not, living two worlds, but every day in our lives. And if you have the eyes to see, you can see that an old world is dying. A paradigm is going through a crucifixion process, and the new is emerging. So you have two worlds simultaneously coexisting, and people, in my opinion, are called to develop their consciousness, to expand their vision, to expand their consciousness to a place where they can relatively comfortably see both, or see aspects of both. Because it's only when we see the bigger picture can we be a participant in transmuting the old and transforming the old, and simultaneously be building the new. So last thing I just want to say is that you start off this article talking about the fall energies. You were writing this, I think, before the fall equinox in September. And you talked about that. I'll even read it. Let me just read it right here. The energies of the fall represent an opportunity for our most significant personal transformation. Adversity is inherent to the season. It is the challenges that we naturally encounter during this time of the year that give us the opportunity to catalyze our soul's transformation. So you really talk about this theme of transformation. And when people know that, because we've gotten so disconnected from the astrology, from the seasons and the cycles, we're just people are thinking, what am I going to have for dinner? What movie am I going to go see? It was my cell phone working, the core things, are my devices and my technology, is it serving me? Is it working for me? And we've lost, I think, in large part, the connection with nature and the cycles and the seasons of the earth, but also of God. And I like to come back to those conversations with you, Paul, because that's where the meaning is. That's where the marrow is. And that's where people can really embrace that it's not meaningless catalyst for change. It's productive. It's empowering. It's engaging if we'll turn to it. Those that feel called. And some people are like, what is she talking about? Then just stick around and see some of the places and things that we're going to talk about. So I'm talking about themes of transformation. I'm talking about seasons and cycles. I'm feeling the astrology that like every sign feels like it wants to say something right now. Like when I read your latest article, it's like the whole cast and crew of the cosmos are present and they all want to say and what's going down. So do you want to talk about that a little bit, Paul?
Well, thanks again for having me. It has been a while since we spoke, and it's always a pleasure, and I always love to have these conversations with you. And I do want to try to keep it more spiritually aligned, and we'll try to talk in regards to not just framing what's happening, but keep it on the spiritual level so that we don't kind of fall into the abyss of fear, which is going on right now. But that's something that I wanted to address, because I wrote an essay in October of 2018. So that was 5 years ago. And it was very similar themes. And the idea that there's a seasonal change in the fall, and that there's a challenge for all humanity. And that, it's like these portals that open up. It's always there. And I kind of had a little bit of an epiphany. My son kind of like forced me to watch Game of Thrones, which to this day I still don't understand it. It was, I don't know if you've seen it or not.
No, I haven't.
No, okay.
But
Good
it's a
for you.
series.
Oh yeah, it was a long, convoluted, violent series based on somebody's idea of mythology. But there was a scene in there that struck me, and I think they were called the Snow Walkers or the Walking Dead, but they seasonally like manifested when the light forces of light, or the presence of the light on Earth, started to diminish, so that now the darker forces have the upper hand. And I think that seesaw battle exists, and so now it's a time of darkness that we're descending into, always seasonally. And if you look at how the people in the North, especially, then talked about the Yuletide and these types of things, the idea of astral energies descending into the earth and making their presence known, and so this is part of our mythology, that this is the time of the year when these things happen, when the darkness descends. And it's no surprise, and we talked about this before, that there's a major holiday that's missing out of our awareness or our consciousness. And we have every season a major celebration, but it's really missing out of the fall. So we have our 4th of July, which is more or less the summer solstice, and we have Easter, which more or less is the equinox of the spring, and we have Christmas time, which is more or less the winter solstice. But there really isn't a celebration for the fall equinox. It doesn't exist. But it did exist at one time.
Wow.
So that's been overridden by Halloween, which is a completely and utterly, reveling in the astral energies that are descending into the earth that can be dark and spooky and scary. And yeah, I mean, and we've become very conditioned to revel in it. I mean, the Halloween decorations around our neighborhood are more than Christmas in many instances. And so it's becoming, I think, as powerful, if not more of an important celebration in many cultures, and ours included, than some of these older, more spiritually based celebrations. And so the missing the missing holiday was called Michaelmas, and Michaelmas occurred right around the time that I was writing this. I mean, it's a little bit afterwards, but usually these holidays are close to the change. And so the 22nd was the equinox, and Michaelmas is celebrated somewhere between the 28th of September and the 8th of October. So that's where, and what is it? It's a celebration of the archangel. It's a celebration of human fortitude. It's a celebration of the human spirit. It's a celebration or acknowledgement that we have to fortify ourselves. We have to arm ourselves. We have to become aware, and we have to take a stand against, or at least arm ourselves or shield ourselves from these other earthly forces and influences that are generally associated with the shadow or the dark presence of the astral realm and other worldly forces that descend onto earth and gain their power once the light of the sun starts to lose its presence. And so that's what the equinox is that's around a point where half of the time is light, half of the time is dark. But now we're past that point where more of the day is dark than light. Some parts of the world, the light will never even reach it. So that was kind of what I was invoking and feeling when I wrote the essay. But to my amazement was this alignment that was there. And I remember that we're looking at very precise time here, and I mean, I came late in my life to astrology. My wife has been doing it a lot longer than I have. But when I asked her, I said, do we usually see these kind of spectacular, alignments? This just seems unusual to be seeing such great spectacular alignments during these times. I mean, we're going to look. You can look at astrology every single day, every single moment if you want. But I'm only looking at it generally 4 times a year, and then looking at it now because today's Friday the 13th. And tomorrow is the 14th, which is also going to be another, it's going to be a solar eclipse, which is going to cut across a large part of the Western United States. It starts around Portland and it goes all the way down to the southern part of Texas. And that in itself, and we can, I don't want to go into the details of it, but it could represent, certainly there could be dark or nefarious forces that are looking at the astrology of things that might want to try to harness something, during that time. The tragedies that happened in Hawaii, and I won't mention the place, happened on the Lionsgate portal.
They tend to match up with these significant dates.
So yes, but keep this in mind, that there's always 2 different ways to look at the alignments. And there's a mundane way of looking at it, which I think it's now archaic. And I think that it's all steeped in linear relationships, and it's all steeped in materialism. If you're looking at it and certainly linear time is a big part of it. And if we look at the astrology in that way, you're looking at it in a dead way. It's dead. There's no more life in that. Right. So I look at it always and only in a spiritual way. That's the only way I can look at this. And so it's a higher octave, so to speak. And in the higher octaves, you see some, you what might look like in the mundane way of looking at it, or in a lower resonance, what might look dark and scary could in the higher resonance just mean we're going through transition. It's good to see these dark things starting to fall apart, but so that was kind of how I was looking at this fall transformation.
It's powerful. Like, I think you're talking through a higher lens. What's mundane, but the mundane often gets people's attention, and if it's good, it's good, and they just go on about their business. And if it's challenging, they go to fear. But when you have a bigger picture lens on what this time is really about, it's bigger than fear. It's bigger than the triggers that people might, if they're recognizing any triggers, it's bigger than that. It's asking us to expand our vision from a spiritual level. We're not just talking physical vision here. We're talking literally like seeing deeper, looking for meaning in the challenges, in the lessons, in the triggers and things that people are going through. So I feel like as we see the shadow energies rise in the season of the fall, there's this opportunity for like tremendous transformation, but it's almost like the fall of this world age and cycle. Like, to me, it's a much broader fall, right? If we fell from grace, from a much higher consciousness, kind of like Alice in Wonderland, but we fell down, in consciousness, we are in the time of the rising back up. And so you have to see the shadows that have emerged in our lower density experience, like through all these, like, war. Human beings don't really want that war, but the vibrations and the entities that have usurped this creation, we're kind of in the underbelly of God's creation. We're in the upside down version of it. The fall, where we have to witness these shadows rising and the unpleasantness of things being revealed. But what it actually means is if we are at the time that we're witnessing this deep shadow of the earth, we're also going to be letting in the greatest light. And that means in our lives, in the creations, and how people start to come together again, right? Where we don't embrace like competition and individualism. Like the thing that's motivating us is to come together in conversations like these. We've been doing this for the past several years. Just feeling this call to connect with other people on the path of seeing bigger, deeper, farther, more inward, clearer. And it is a journey. I know some people who are listening to this will resonate that my greatest gifts of the wisdom and the nuggets of insight that I've gleaned has generally come out of some of my own deepest shadow work. Right. And that's now, but that was the case for Marie, and that was the case for Paul. Now this is the case for the whole planet. So the planet is going to see this like planetary shadow. Whoa. Like that's where the picture gets bigger, right?
Right. And that's the thing. So for me, I see no fear in any of it. It doesn't exist for me. There's a couple of reasons for that, but we offered astrological counseling, or as a way to enhance the care that we give to the patients in our office, and virtually no one, not everyone, but very few people have taken us up on it, because there is an intrinsic fear of it, because it's an unknown, and they think that, probably from conditioning, that they're going to find something terrible about themselves and they don't want to know about it. That's just absolutely the wrong way to look at it. But for many people who interpret astrology based on mundacity, or based on the mundane things in life, oh, I'm going to predict when you're going to die, or when you're going to have a car accident, or your husband's going to leave you, or whatever this stuff is, it has no interest in my observations of, because that's all just variables that may or may not happen. We were trying to use it as a tool to know yourself better, your true self better. And so there is that, there's this almost a prejudice against it, or a aversion against it. Most people still don't want to know it. And now we're being forced, I think, to start to reckon with a lot of things. And I want to mention this because because it's an opportunity for me to mention it. But in your last transmission, which I don't know if it's the last one you've received, but it was the last one that was published. You said that, and I want to get this right. You said that the ego has to surrender to divine your divine consciousness is what you said. Your ego must surrender to your divine consciousness. And you were using this in reference to what Jesus said about the way, the truth, and the life. And you were using this in reference to the truth.
Yes.
So, I did an essay a few months ago, and it was something that I knew was going to be really controversial, and I don't think anyone really liked it, but I wrote it anyway.
Truth is controversial in a world trying to not see it.
Well, I used to think, well, I'll write it for now, and I realized you're just writing this for yourself. Maybe you're writing it at some point as a historical record in case anyone, stumbles upon it, centuries from now. They might have an idea of what some poor sap was thinking about during all of this transitional stuff.
I hope I'm that person that discovers the writings of Dr. Paul Panzica.
Well, yeah. Well, and I think part of it is self-preservation. I always felt that we may have had a hand in some of the previous scriptures already.
Yeah.
And that you're leaving a record. Although I think in an ascended realm, it's not necessary anymore. But in the descended realm, in the lower realm, in the linear dense realm, that's the only way we were able to, outside of reading the Akashic field, that was it. But you were talking about truth and about surrendering your ego to divine consciousness. And I thought it was wonderful that you said it. So that's exactly what we must do. But there's something else about that, because you were saying true truth. What is true truth? And you were using little t and big T,
right?
Which is, I love that, because that's what the psychologists used to use. But when you start writing that down, people just get confused. Why are you capitalizing it now? Why is it in lowercase? And somebody would come by and try to edit that.
Yeah.
So I know you do it all the time.
Yeah.
And I love when you do it. But when I do it, I'm going, this is how Marie would say it. No one's going to get this, and there's always these inconsistencies when I write. Sometimes it's capitalized, sometimes it's not. It's not just truth, it's other words too. Love, wisdom, all of these things can be either in lowercase or uppercase. And the lowercase is the perspective that we see in the shadows realm, in this darker, mundane realm, and in the higher, in the capitalized is what we're seeing in the ascended realm.
Yes,
because it's one of the things that we've learned is that true objectivity doesn't exist in the dark shadows. It doesn't exist in the mundane. It doesn't exist within linear consciousness. That's not where true objectivity exists. True objectivity exists in the higher realm, and it's collectively understood. Right? It's collectively understood. And so this sentiment that you had about true truth and what is it? And so this is what I wrote. I wrote this essay, which was it was entitled something like "Our Beautiful Ego." And I know that would really get a lot of people upset, because you just said that the ego must surrender itself to divine consciousness. But what happens when it does that? And that's the question. What happens when your little ego, not your big ego, your little ego, surrenders itself to divine consciousness? It's a union that occurs, right? It's a beautiful union that occurs. And now, see, there's different perspectives on that word, and you're dealing with semantics, and you're dealing from different perspectives, and I get it. But I spent a long time studying anthroposophy and theosophy and these other things. And they always made a correlation between ego and what they also called your I, and just the capital letter I.
Oh.
And that was your I. But it could also be that. It could also be your I. Your I is unique. It's a very extremely unique aspect of who we are. It has such a uniqueness, like your fingerprints. And so what was that I, that, or I, it's to me, to be less confusing, your I am, right? I am. And that, I think, is where we're going, we're shifting from that distorted ego, the ego that's been programmed and conditioned, into a union with divine consciousness. And you didn't say divine consciousness, you said your divine consciousness. That's higher self. That's spiritual, but that's you coming back into union with your higher self.
And Christ consciousness, like that.
Well, yes. Right. Yes. And I loved it because you used Christ and Sophia when you started talking about the life. But that is also called logoic or logos.
Oh, that's right.
Truth is logos. That's your logos.
And how do you define logos again? I always like to hear you say
the
that.
Greeks were playing around that concept a long time ago, but it basically means that it's the objective truth of anyone or anything. It's its true purpose. It's its true meaning. It's its true manifestation, right? It's its true manifestation. And in astrology, our true manifestation is logoic, right? And so it's not, we look at it as our sun sign, because that's our strongest personality trait is our sun. And guess what? We're talking about light. We're talking about sun cosmically, right? And in that essay I wrote, I had a picture of a lion in there, because that's what it is. It's Leo. It's Leo energy. It's fire. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So I think we would, when we do that, when we subject that little ego, the shadow, it's really a shadow of our conditioning and through life sequences and karma, mistakes, transgressions, they create that. It creates that so that we're stuck with this impression of who we think we are. But when we can let go of that and surrender ourselves to our higher self, our true spiritual self, then we don't destroy the ego. The ego is still a tool. It's still an aspect of the mind that's really good at discerning, things logically or interpreting things, but it's really terrible at trying to create an original thought. It can't do that. So once that union has occurred, we resurrect ourselves into a glorious manifestation of our true logoic self. We're all aspects of God. All of us in that higher realm are aspects of God, and we can't get there until our little ego surrenders itself to our personal divine consciousness. But when that happens, we transfigure ourselves. We're transfiguring ourselves into our most truthful manifestation, which is determined through, we can look at it through astrology if you wanted to look at it that way, but those are our light codes. That's exactly what that is. Those are our light codes. And when we start living in that truthful manifestation, that is what I was trying to get at in the essay. That is your true ego. That's your ego with a big E, not a little e. That is, and that's what people like Rudolf Steiner was trying to tell us. Completely and utterly misunderstood amongst the people that had studied him. But that's really what it is that's how powerful we are. We're individuated aspects of the creator, of God, of Christ Sophia. We're of our divine mother and father. I mean, that's how powerful we are. Somebody, I think it was a Gnostics or the Greek, the Hellenistic Gnostics, but they had like a tree, or they asked you like, God, or what you call it, whatever you want. And then there was, the angels where they stood, and where Christ Sophia stood. And the hierarchy is simply this: it's this creational God that exists in both a masculine and feminine polarity. And then there's Christ Sophia, and then there's Adam. There's humanity. Human beings are that high in the order. Humanity is that high in the order. The angels are below us, not above us.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, it was that powerful. That's what the Gnostics understood. But so we're moving in that direction. But the thing is that as we move into that direction, then we have to start stepping into that role. We have to start becoming.
Yes.
And we also have to stop thinking in terms of separation anymore.
Right.
The little ego is still there, but it's not controlling things anymore. We have to start coming into that I am awareness, and start living our truthful logoic self. And I would have to say that with all of the chaos that's going on now in the universe, and not in the universe, in this world, and allegedly we're all, like many of us, are representatives from other worlds, that we clearly you have a strong connection to another world, which you're aware of, right? And many of us, but it took a special soul to come down here and experience it all on the ground. And I do feel like at times I'm having dreams, and what I'm doing is I'm explaining what's going on, almost like giving a lecture. And I used to say, who am I speaking to? And I started going, oh, I'm speaking to the people that I came from, so that they could understand what's actually really going on.
Right. I can
World,
totally see you doing that. Like, as the boots on the ground, this is my report.
Exactly. And yes, we all have to give ourselves a break, because we're in such a mundane density right now. We've been through a lot.
Yeah, we have been through a lot. And I wanted to say just a couple things. Like, we're not meant for the mundane. That's just the illusion that we're, however you interpret that. But even if you think about the gotta make the donuts guy, like, he just has to gotta go make the donuts. He's got to clock in and make the donuts, and he's got to clock out. Right. People don't want to make the donuts anymore. I think hence the rise of the use of substances. Or there's all kinds of vices now that we didn't even think were possible when we were kids, just because people are so desperate to fill the void that they won't look at, like you said in your offering and your practice. Like, people, the lower matrix in the, like, lowercase t, in those lower letters, it really is like a lower consciousness. And people, we've been in it so long, people can actually, you've seen it in souls who are living their lives, that kind of vacancy inside them is what's normal. That's what life is. And when you try and fill yourself up with all kinds of substances or doings, or trying to create meaning through either consumption or doing or whatever, it's running its course, where I think the emptiness is getting exposed, the separateness is getting exposed, the lack of meaning is getting exposed. And some people might listen to this and say, I don't know what they're talking about. My life's pretty good, and I don't have a big spiritual compass or anything. But it's the squeeze is on because you and I have both known, we've talked about this before, the planet herself, you might even say, and I have a sense that she's already ascended. We're in the echo of her ascension now, where everybody has to get up to speed with the frequency that's required. And so even if people aren't getting, we all get flooded with emails in our box, and I'm definitely an example of that. And sometimes it slips through the cracks, and I missed some. It's like, I think people are missing the memo that this could be the most important thing of their soul's journey, is to find the invitation from the earth, from God, to connect with your Christ Sophia codes, those that logos inside. I love how the guides, when you were talking, Paul, I love how they define truth ultimately as the consciousness of God, right? We're invited to connect with that God consciousness, that Christ consciousness inside ourselves. And then I also wanted to just spotlight, this was something that came from a transmission a couple times ago, where the guides were really saying, you're in a time where you're witnessing the darkness and you're empowering the light in one breath. There's like, in one fluid motion, you're witnessing the darkness, which witness, for people who don't really know what that means you don't fully engage. You're observing as an observer, but you're in neutrality. And it takes practice to be in neutral, that all your emotions and all your chemistry doesn't, react and light up to fight or to yell about it or to argue about it or to defend it. You're just observing from this place of neutrality, and it takes time to cultivate that. It really, really does. So people who are unskilled, I believe people are going to get an opportunity to become skilled, because again, the invitation is pulsing, not outside. It's not an external invitation like you get in your inbox. It's an invitation that's coming from inside you that you can't not receive. And if you don't feel like you've gotten an invitation, you're going to get it through things like squeezes, where there's going to be so much opportunity for you to react to all kinds of things. As more of the pulsings and the squeezes happen, the skill that I feel like this planetary, this ascension experience is calling out, is mastery of your neutrality. To be able to witness things, that you witness suffering, witness horrible things, witness corruption. But as you discipline your energy field, you don't light up, you don't engage, you don't fight it, and you witness and you empower the light. And you witness the terrible things of the old matrix, and you're empowering your new life. And I'm still in the practice of that, but I feel like that is ultimately the ultimate rub of our time. And I said that to somebody the other day, and people have said that in the comments. So you say witness the darkness and empower the light. Like, how do you do that? I'm curious, do you feel a sense of that? And like, what's that like for you, or seeing
No,
other
no,
people? Yeah, go ahead.
no, absolutely. I mean, for me, it was always that, now that you mentioned this, and all of a sudden I went, oh yeah, that's exactly what's been happening for most of my life, is that it originally happened in the dreamscape. So in the dreamscape, that could be, it's again, a dark, shadowy place. And in those dreams, originally when they started, they were, a lot of times they were frightening to me, as a child. And you can, and actually right now, I can still see some really crazy stuff in the dreams, and I can see many correlations to what's going on in the world. But from a young age, I was being conditioned through the dreamscape to not react, to not react to what I was being shown, and to be patient, and to see what information or truth it's eventually conveying to me. So it was always the attitude. It was the attitude that I learned to adopt within dreamscape, decades before any of this happened. So I've been very well conditioned for it. And I feel the same way now in witnessing what's happening now. It's almost like a dream. Yes. We were talking about this off camera before we started. It's surreal. Everything is happening now is surreal. And it is like a dream. And so there is a message that's being conveyed to us. And I wholeheartedly agree that we're not supposed to react. And however you phrase that before, that's exactly right. You know, it's witnessing the darkness, you said, and
empowering the light simultaneous.
powering the light. Because there's a tremendous amount of truth when the darkness exposes itself or shows you these truths, or it's when it shows you its innate nature, when the darkness shows you innate nature, and it's like it's like a chess game. And it's showing you its next move,
right?
And you could see what it's going to be. And again, you're not supposed to, maybe react the way that it's trying to entrap you to react. Right. You're supposed to think further ahead, and you're supposed to allow sometimes. And I have this feeling now that there's so little forethought in what's going on from the darkness that they're going to hang them. They're already hanging themselves. They're showing you the limitations of their insight and of their power. And it was a God-given characteristic for humanity is forethought, is foresight.
Right.
And Prometheus and Chiron were punished for giving us these things. But the fact is that we don't have to do much, but just allow them to make their mistakes and to completely and utterly hang themselves, because that's exactly what's happening. I mean,
and that's why it takes longer. That's also why it takes longer. That patience that you mentioned, yes. It's like witnessing their playbook or their MO, whatever you want to call it, witnessing how they do it. When people turn and they say, oh my God, do you know what's happening here? And they get 10 other people to look at it. That's right. How the Matrix uses us to empower the dark structures. Even right. If you are not in the dark structures, but by turning to it and giving it a lot of energy, you're giving it form.
Absolutely. And it's also a quagmire. In the worst case scenario, it would draw you into the conflict. It would pull you in.
Yes.
You can't do that. And now keep in mind, there's all kinds of terrible things happening all over the world, and something bad might happen to you, but it's only until then, do you have to really address it? I think at this point, by not feeding into the fear of it and not drawing your attentions even to it. I mean, I've been telling people for the last 15 years or more, turn off your television set completely and utterly. Do not watch anything that has any corporate influence within it, including the news or anything that's sponsored through commercials or anything like that, because that's where the major aspect of programming has always been occurring.
And it's called programming. They didn't hide it. They don't hide it. They're telling you what they're doing.
I know, but your life is 1,000% better once you distance yourself from it for a while and start focusing on what's really important. I mean, I haven't watched the news, and I mean, I invariably I'll have to while I'm in a public, if I'm waiting in an airport or something like that. But you might think I'm a poorly informed person on that. I would say I'm
on the contrary. Yeah. On the contrary, I think you become the most informed when you're not in the programming of the system.
Right, and pursue what you feel is truthful and follow those leads.
Right, because the consciousness of God is in you, and God is truth, like an absolute truth through all time. And so,
yeah, like you said, it's a constant.
It's a constant.
Truth is a universal constant that is objective, which we can find through resonance.
Yes. Yes.
And it's exactly when we are in resonance with it, it's love.
Yes.
It's felt as love.
Yes.
Right? And when we're aware of it, it's wisdom.
Ooh, I like that, Paul. That's really beautiful.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So, and they're all the same thing.
Yes.
Right.
So I wanted to go back for just a minute because many of our listeners know that you are a physician. And one of the things that you just said, like turn off your TVs, but I also feel like, I'm speaking about the rub that, like, when you're in that state of grace, when you're in that resonance with the higher knowing, the truth with the capital T, you just know you can't convince people of this because the ego, that lower ego, needs to be convinced. But the wise soul that we all are, when you do the work to set it free, to allow its consciousness to be informing you and guiding you and leading you, I have several thoughts streaming through, so I want to make sure I make my point here, is that you're really tapping in within, but that's a vibration or a feeling or an experience inside people that for some people it's still very foreign. And yet I feel compelled to sort of spotlight this rub of witnessing the darkness and empowering the light. I feel like it is one of the core challenges of our time, of like, it's the ascension pathway. We will learn. If you don't know how to do it now, you will be taught. You are being schooled in learning how to do this, and it's only going to continue. But you as a physician, I would think about somebody who's been given a diagnosis, maybe not by you, maybe from somewhere else, and they've come to you for a second opinion. And I know some people would say, so say you've gotten a diagnosis that nobody wants to hear, right? And there's this rub because it's like you're not trying to avoid the knowledge, the truth that that label can be slapped on that condition, and that describes a set of symptoms or what's happening in the body. But even with an illness, is what I'm saying, you can witness the diagnosis of the illness, but it's not you. And this also doesn't mean checking out and avoiding and pretending you never had that conversation, you never had those tests run. It's witnessing the condition, but you are not the condition. You're the creator of what you choose to have in your condition. Does that make sense? Like, there's so many ways that this presents in our lives. For some people, it's through illness. For somebody else, it's because they have $100 in the bank, right? And that's it. And they've got $2,000 of bills to pay. But I'm also pointing out, like, there's so many things. What darkness can be, it can be lack in your bank account. It can be a lack of health in your body. But that's also coming to the forefront now, is to realize if we are living in an illusion, and we are these beings that you say, like, are even somehow what we think of as angels, that we might be a level of above. But what that just means is our light somehow burns bright and we have these creationary skills. I feel like this is ultimately the rub of our time, and it's an interesting topic to have, because if you have these conversations with people who are not expanding their spirituality and their soul vision, they'd be saying, so what, I'm just going to ignore what's going on in the world and be apathetic and, pretend it's not happening, all the things that people can be accused of, right? And nowhere in what the guide said and what I'm saying is asking you to pretend that you're not seeing something that you clearly feel like you're seeing or that you've heard. But there's a spiritual transcendence and alchemy, like this mastery that we have. Maybe it's the sword of truth within us, which you talk about, the sword of truth, and you mentioned Michaelmas, and that's one of our greatest shields, is like the sword of truth. True truth is that you are God's perfect design. So if anything in our bodies, look at us, we both wear glasses. Something inside us, is not in totally the perfection of God, or we wouldn't be wearing glasses. But I feel like there's this awareness, like I smile every day. If I have a ache or pain in my body, whatever it might be, I have always known that I will have a moment where I can, like, scan my body and everything will be fixed. I'm working my way or evolving my way into that level of consciousness. We are the ones that are setting ourselves free. And one of the biggest traps of this world is getting stuck in a neural groove where, because of what we're being told or what we're seeing that's being fed on a screen to us or through our neighbors or whatever, that we're manifesting that as true. But often that is the lowercase t true. Just because we've heard it enough times, we've seen it enough times, that's what is the reality. And to me, witnessing the darkness and empowering the light is anything less than the logos, like that divine, pristine perfection which is just like a state of grace inside us, right? That I'm well aware if that makes me feel worse, then I'm aware that's a program. What's going on in the world to instill fear and all the movies playing out on the news and the newscasting and the narrations, it's to bring you into that lower dimensional cage, if you will, the prison system, to stay right where you are. Don't go anywhere, right? Don't take a commercial break. Don't take a spirituality break. Don't have an ascension break. Stay right here in the fear of the programming. And what I think people need to wake up to is, wait, that might be a program. You have to have awareness of your awareness to witness something and say, wait, is that really happening? Or is that something I want to give my energy to? It's the observer of the observer having the observation, where you can find that patience and that stillness to say, whether or not that's truly happening. And some of us don't even know because we're not in all these areas, right? I haven't gone to the place in Hawaii myself and laid eyes on what's exactly going on, but we've seen what's been reported as examples. But I can say that is still in the creation of God. What we're talking about right now, those are illusions, because those things don't happen in a real God timeline. And I'm talking about, like, I didn't really like the movie, but there's a movie called Inception. Have you seen that movie?
I turned it off after a while.
I know it's a lot, right? But he kind of like he like puts himself in this state where he like goes levels and levels and levels of consciousness to achieve certain things in the best way of what that movie might have been trying to say. I don't really know if they had the best of intentions, but we can kind of move through dimensions of time through our consciousness and choose, like, empower the light. And this to me it does seem like a big rub for people, because when the messages stream through me, and not to say that I don't have my challenges, like whatever the guides in the messages I bring through might be talking about, some things I've learned already and some things I'm still learning, right? We're all still growing. But I've seen on people's faces, if I say that to people, that I have awareness that they might not claim themselves to be on a spiritual path, they look at me with like a blank stare, like, what does that mean? Like, how do you do that? How do you witness darkness and not react? Like, I think reaction is what we've been shown in this world is caring. Reacting and having, like, animating about something is caring. And I think it's just another distraction from what we really need to be doing, which is communing with the codes inside us so we can empower the light. We see the darkness, we witness the darkness, we don't empower the darkness. And then we go inside into stillness, into some version of union, however people feel that, maybe with just breathing and getting to a space of neutrality. And for me, I actually choose at that point, after I get into that stillness, I'll vision something in that scenario, or the earth, or in the way we've always been meant to live, where there's just harmony, where people are cooperative and they're kind. It's an ascended consciousness. It's a timeline where we already are. And I'm kind of bringing that timeline here, even if what I just saw or heard was a terrible thing. But our world is unpracticed at that. Yeah. And I think your writings convey this too, in your own ways, Paul.
Yeah, keep in mind that what happened in Hawaii was a very real event, and
Yes.
there's tremendous amounts of suffering and chaos and tragedy. But keep in mind that that's the nature of the lower density reality. So that's what it entails. And you know, it's not specific to one location or another. It happens throughout time and throughout history and throughout location, that the tragedies that are going on right now and right before our very eyes, whether you have the eyes to see them or the wisdom to, or the insight to know them, are happening right now, and it's horrific. So how do we move beyond it? I
Right.
think that's
That's
the
the
real
question.
question.
Yeah.
And then there was something that I saw in the astrology of this month that that made me start thinking that it's time for us to come to a different understanding of what value is. We have to transcend value. And it had to do with where the moon was positioned, and it was in Capricorn, and it was in a kite formation. And I can show you what it is, but maybe we'll look at the Star of David, but not right now. And the Star of David is actually comprised of 6 kites. And a kite is a very interesting formation because it's forcing transcendence. It's forcing transfiguration.
Wow.
And so the idea of Capricorn, or the moon in Capricorn, which is where we're very vulnerable with our emotional, it also has to do with our sense of value and appreciation and these types of things, is being forced to change. See, that if we put value in the homes that were destroyed, or in the fortunes that were lost, or even the lives that were lost, which is a horrible thing, but we have to look at it in a bigger perspective and understand we're all going to die. And many of us have died horrific deaths already, many times over already. Is that the end of everything when that all ends? And it's ending. All of it is ending. Now, in one way or another, it's ending. That's what they're giving us, this transitional period, whether that's years or a decade or a little bit longer or less than, I don't know. I mean, they're trying to postpone this for as long as they can.
Because our life force is their life force. When we give it life, it feeds it.
Yeah, it's reciprocal. But on top of everything else, Vesta was involved, and Vesta is about the divine plan. And so there is this divine plan. So I think in order to kind of escape the matrix and in order to move forward and ascend, you have to realign your values. You have to start to understand what's really important. What am I going to take with me, when I die? We're not technically, we're dying, but what am I going to take with me when I ascend? Nothing. Nothing is worth anything anyway. So I mean, these all are tragedies, but most of the people that are embroiled in these tragedies are holding on to those same exact things. They're all crumbling and falling apart and collapsing anyway, and they're losing their value. They're completely and utterly losing their value. And so I think we're at the point now where we have to come to a greater sense of what true value is, and we have to understand, okay, maybe I value my health over my wealth, right? Maybe I value my relationships with others over my control of others, these types of things.
Wow.
And there's going to be a large percentage of people that aren't going to want to do it because they're conditioned, or their natural orientation isn't prepared for what's in store for us. But you're right, Marie, we can only ascend through vibration. It's a resonance. Godness has nothing to do with this at all. It's have we prepared ourselves through this life and others, and are we done with the conflict? Are we done with the materialism? Are we ready to move forward? And I think that's where our values have to change. And you can't make anyone do this. You're either ready or you're not. Right. And sure, there's all these questions that aren't answered. Well, how am I going to provide for myself? What am I going to do? Hey, you know what? It's like jumping into an abyss. We have no idea how that's going to play out, but you can't possibly predict, in a linear fashion, how or where or when or any of the machinations of this. You just can't. That's where faith comes in. That's where surrendering yourself to your divine consciousness comes in, because it's the ego that's constantly trying to control all of these parameters. And
Right,
so
which is always preventing the things that you want as well. Like it's
always preventing your ascension. Always. It's not just the thing that, I mean, if you want ascension, I mean, if you want to live in a world of cooperation and abundance, and a world that's governed through love and divine justice, then that's where you're going. But how am I going to get from point A to point B? Still, we've been having these discussions for years now. I don't know all of the mechanics of that. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I know it's going to happen in one way or another. It's going to happen because and it might not be through anything that you can imagine, because this world doesn't provide any answers. It's like asking science, what happens to me when I die? We don't know. We can't possibly answer that question because we don't have any, technological information or linear information or derived information to answer the question. But that's the limitations of the world that you're trying to hold on to. So, and the only thing I could say is that we do have to move past linearity and cause and effect and time as it exists, as we perceive it, and we have to let go, and we have to allow ourselves to move in that direction. And I don't know if I can answer it any better than that right now. I don't know.
You said it so well, Paul, because in effect, you're also describing what Lacey and I, at least in Whole Soul School and Foundation, that's the hero's journey. And part of the hero's journey is leaving the known, leaving what you know, and stepping into the realm of the unknown and consciously making the choice to do so. And I think it's like we're going where no man has gone before. Like we're going into this space, trusting that divinity within us, whether that's people's language or not. There is this, like, I am willing to leave what I know because the limitations of the known world do not engage me anymore. Right? Like
Yeah.
if that has been material wealth, or if it has been acquiring things, or whatever those things are, there's an awareness that, like, the greatest thing, the things that have the greatest value in the higher realms are intangibles. It's frequency. It's all about frequency. And saying that is so wild, because in a world where we've all grown up, most have grown up in a world oblivious to the facts, the truth with a capital T, that this is an energetic universe that's all been kind of hidden or kept from us. And if some people were discovering it, maybe they were made fun of or just unsupported. And what we're finding is that's the most important thing, is connecting with the vibrations of your light and the power that has to create worlds. It's all about our frequency, which means we have to, in our own ways, just unhook from the matrix. We disconnect to some degree while we're still observing, but our power is going into the magnitude, the amplification of our light, and where we're directing that energy, because that is what creates worlds. And so we are leaving linearity. I love how you're talking, and we're leaving where the systems of this world that we thought defined us, the job, the title, the letters after our names, all those things that we felt created safety and security. But what was that safety and security? Was in a realm where most of the world was not truly with a capital T, not just believing in God, but knowing God, in union with God. So we filled ourselves up with all these things. And I love how you bring in this energy of value, because at the end of the day, what I'm also talking about is, like, I love my own company. At the end of the day, if a lot of people don't understand how I'm talking or living or being, I am in resonance with me. Right. And I like to find people who are in resonance with themselves and then resonate at this higher frequency of light and creation and colors and all of that. And that's foreign to some people who might even be listening, to say, wow, I'm not having any of that light juice that they're talking about. Like, I'm not feeling that quite yet, but you keep going. For some reason, I don't know why, what my consciousness wants to say this. Terry Cole Whitaker, Dr. Terry Cole Whitaker, who I also podcasted with some this year, she says a phrase, because she talks about manifesting or your spiritual and earthly desires, right? 8 steps to your spiritual and earthly desires. But one of the things that she says sticks with me a lot. She says, do the thing and the power is yours. And she has such a beautiful way of explaining it because she knows it so deeply. A lot of people feel like they've got to have the thing to get the thing. You know what I mean? And all this it links into what you're talking about, value. What she's talking about is the vibrational becoming. You vibrationally become whatever it is. And then the power of what you're trying to manifest or whatever it is that you wanted is there for you, but you don't get it until you do the thing first. You become the frequency of that which you seek, basically, right? What we're talking about today, Paul, a lot of people know about the law of attraction. A lot of people know about manifesting, but even that was a trap to some degree with some of those videos about you can manifest everything that you want, because that still keeps our focus on the material world. And we've known and we've seen it from many of the sacred teachers. The true gems of this universe is like being completely free and sovereign and filled with joy just in being you, just in breathing and being you. And I think what I'm talking about is a level beyond what a lot of people can necessarily tap into. And I think many people can tap into it. I think we're messengers of this time in the fall where we're going to be called. What did you say? It's the opportunity for our most significant transformation. This season right now is very ripe, very powerful, very potent, to empower what we're vibrating about, not just what we're focused on, but what you're vibrating, what energy you're emitting. And this is our choice as more things get unveiled of the systems breaking down and getting exposed. There are also these invitations to sow out of things that are falling away. What do you want to create? What do you want to create? What do you want to experience? These are all very sentient questions. These are all really at the felt sense. They're all really at the vibrational level. And I think part of in this time of the shifts, we're having to remember how to value energy, value vibration, value connection, right? Value resonance again as some of the greatest wealth there is, right? Instead of the paper money that can be printed to oblivion or whatever. It's like turning the tides. It's like turning an upside down world right side up again, where this is what we valued the most: helping each other, being present with each other, listening to each other, sharing together, breaking bread together, feeling all the sensations of the food that was made so consciously for us to all enjoy together, right? It's those vibrational ingredients that make a really good, sovereign, joyful life it's still very foreign concept to many. And even you and I mean, people can be on this path for a long time and there are still sometimes triggers. We still have to breathe through some stuff when we see the 3D matrix working really hard to get the attention of our little ego, right? And then it just takes discipline to say, oh, I know you, right? I know who you are. I know the programs and I know my ego that wants to respond to that. And then I have to take a breath and say, okay, I'm going to disengage and I'm going to witness that. And I'm going to choose the essence in me as best I can of what I really want to be. And I don't always achieve it. I don't always achieve it. I have my moments. I find it interesting just being somebody who's a fire sign. I guess that's my sun sign. That's about what I understand about astrology, being a Leo. But, the sort of truth can come out of me, and that might even be sometimes lowercase t truth, but truth will come out. If the little ego, I don't know, but is mocked by the matrix somehow, you know what I mean? And I just have to watch that in myself because I'm a fire sign. So fire's going to be it wants to come out. But, that same fire is totally there to inspire. And I love having both. It's also a lot of I don't know if it's self-forgiveness as much as it's self-love, loving myself for the capacity that I have to start firing off frequencies of truth, to cut through the illusions that sometimes happen in relationships. But it's also there equally to create worlds. I have absolutely access to both. All of us have access to the duality inside of us, whatever it is. And that's also part of the value of on my better days, I don't judge that fire in me, the shadow side of fire, right? That can get overwhelmed or fiery, angry, frustrated, right? Because it's the same life force that powers my dreams. And I think people are also in the greatest darkness of the planet that may be playing out. We have the opportunity to create together the greatest light. When more of the world does come together, which I think is going to happen, because people, you can only have your chain yanked so many times before you realize who's yanking my chain. And then you realize my chain doesn't need to get yanked. I'm the one who controls my, or manages my response to that. And that has to become a value of humanity right now, of realizing that all the, whatever you want to call them, whether they're false flags, whatever they are, and still real people get hurt, right? In times of a spiritual battle that we're in. But people have to, I think it goes back to the observer of the observer and the self-awareness and just titrating that while you honor yourself in the journey wherever you are. Whatever your triggers are, you honor that. And whatever your strengths are, you honor those. And you're all of that. You're all of it. And only when we're really comfortable with our shadow and we're really comfortable with our light, to me, do the Christ Sophia codes start coming together. And we are prepared at that point to surrender the little ego. The ego is afraid of what it doesn't know. But when you know yourself, you're ready to surrender to your divine consciousness because you know every aspect about you and you love it. You love all of it. That, I think, is some of the chasm that humanity is dealing with right now. Powerful.
Yeah, and there's a discrepancy too, and we also have to learn. So we have to learn through hardship, unfortunately, but we have to get to the point of self-awareness. I think you mentioned self-awareness to understand who we truly are, and then understand that I have value, and I have value for just existing.
For just existing.
For existing in my logoic truth. I have, and everything has value, for including the darkness, including the evil players and all. They have value, and they may be very aware that they're not going to win in this struggle. They're not going to overcome the light, but they still might be very aware that they're playing a crucial role in all of this.
Yes.
I was listening to this is something no one wants to talk about, and I had been talking about this for a long time, and even when I wrote my book Beyond the Soul's Meridian, it's in there too if you look at it, some of the essays that I wrote. But we're living in a time right now that was prophesied that this would be the time that Lucifer would be redeemed. This was the time of Lucifer's redemption.
Wow.
Now, wow, really? Lucifer's going to be redeemed? And then I was listening to a channeler. I mean, I know how accurate this is or not, but was bringing up some very valid points. And who is Lucifer? And Lucifer is the bearer of light. And we think of him as the one that tempts Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and all of these other things. And listen, again, evil has a function in all of this. See, this is just an illusionary world or a lower reality. It's an illusionary world from a higher perspective. And of course, it's the materialistic, all we got world from the lower perspective.
Yeah.
But this has all been a massive exercise in learning about ourselves and our relationship to God and our spirit and all of these other things. And so, Lucifer was always the tempter. And he would always offer, souls the chance to, take the shortcut, bypass divine justice and all these other things. And for the longest time, he served that purpose. But again, he was a fallen angel and was doing it, again, as this adversarial being or this adversarial force or this tempting force that was driving human awareness and teaching us these very powerful and painful lessons. And in the end, if you can have compassion for Lucifer, for what he's done and the gifts that he's given us, you're there. You're there. You're ready to ascend. Keep in mind, Lucifer is not Satan. Never was and never will be Satan. It's a different entity.
That's something that most people don't distinguish.
No, that's obfuscated confusion. And to try to explain you the difference, I could do it, but I'm just telling you there is a difference. And Lucifer is connected to the bearer of light. Rudolf Steiner's journal that he wrote, was called Lucifer Gnosis. Lucifer is Gnostic. It's spiritual enlightenment. But too much of it, when you're not prepared for it, will cause nothing but problems. And so a lot of people, they want to ascend as fast as they can, or maybe they want to get this information to use it to manipulate others. He'll give it to you because he knows you're going to hang yourself because you're not ready for it, but you'll be given it. And there are all kinds of organizations that manifested around this entity, quite frankly, have perverted the true essence of this entity and created their own egregory, or egregore, which is this manifestation of something that the collective human mind can create, collective human souls can create in their own image of what they think Lucifer is. But the fact is that he is a fallen angel. The fact is that we've learned some very powerful and painful lessons through our interactions with this being. I think I had mentioned this before, that Steiner equated him with a good thief when Jesus was being crucified, and that there were two. One was redemptive and one was unredemptive. He said that person isn't him, but that person is reflecting the importance of him. And so where he's supposed to teach us are the errors of our ignorant way. Right?
So it's not, he is a being that does tempt people, like you said, has awareness that it can take people beyond. I mean, you can get into trouble if you go too far with that energy, but it's not, you're not saying that Lucifer's, because we know how words have been usurped and corrupted. It's not that they just kept pairing Lucifer with Satan and pairing it over time. People use like Kleenex for tissue. This being has been a seducer or tempter at some level, right? To like indulge and go too far.
Absolutely. And there's also cosmic connections to it. There's also astrological connections to it. We equate Lucifer with Venus, over exuberance. He can be correlated to Jupiter, again, over exuberance, very powerful, very positive energies. So, and that's kind of what the galactics are to us, is that because we are really quite understanding them from their perspective. And so that's Luciferic energy. That's Gnostic Luciferic energy. And then the punishing, evil, dark, shadow, that's satanic. And that is related to Plutonian energy, Martian energy, in lower octaves, but it's also related to Saturn, which is, again, constraining, enslaving energy. And
Wow.
that's Satan, satanic. So they're not the same. They're two polarities, they're two opposite polarities, actually, is what they are. And as we ascend back into a more Gnostic or knowing state, we'll actually kind of like ascend back into that where a point where Lucifer is no longer a fallen angel. He's just his work will be finished.
Do you think the cosmos is waiting? Because you talk about it doesn't have to be a majority of people that are awakening to this higher light. It's a portion of the population that has the power to do this together, but it is a minority. Do you think
Yes.
that's the invitation? Is that one of the invitations of our time, is for people to redeem Lucifer, arrive at the consciousness when you make peace with the teacher that he was,
Yeah.
and you
I think
accept it? You come to a
and have
place of
not
acceptance
only accept it, but have compassion for
and
him.
have compassion for him.
Absolutely. And be grateful for those lessons. I mean, it was terrible. But in a distant perspective, we'll look at this from a distant perspective and outside of the distortion of time and go, those are extremely valuable lessons that we learned. And again, he isn't the bad guy right now in all of this. It's what Rudolf Steiner called Ahriman, or Satan, which is a dark shadow punishing galactic cosmic force, which is actually associated directly with things like AI and technology and all these other things. It's an anti-life principle. The
Wow.
antichrist principle is actually satanic or Ahrimanic. Yeah. So they're the two different polar opposites.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, that's a deep, and you even said valuable lessons. He's facilitated for us. There's another level of value,
Well,
finding value.
we were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And we could look at that as a horrible tragedy, or we could look at it as a very powerful lesson that we all had to learn, is to live outside of that garden, outside of the womb, outside of the realm.
Right.
And it was our nature to defy authority. It is our nature to defy authority, because it was a false reality, right? It was a reality that was created, and we were told externally, you can't do this. Of course, you tell any child that, and they're going to do it.
Oh,
Right?
do it right away. Right.
You can do right away. And so we had to learn. I think it was just a setup to be kicked out for one reason or another, to finally come back to the truth of all of it after thousands and thousands of years of existence outside of it. You had mentioned that there's only a small percentage of us that are aware of what's going on. That's a possibility. And again, there's such a diversity on this plane,
Yes.
in this world right now. And there are some people that are not resonating, and maybe will never resonate. Maybe they're not here to resonate. Maybe they're here to work on the side of darkness. Maybe they're here. Steiner called them the agents of hindrance, and
Oh, interesting.
the agents of hindrance are directly related to Saturn, the powers of Saturn, which again is directly related to Ahriman or Satan. And so these agents of hindrance are here. Maybe a percentage of people living on the world today are agents of hindrance. Maybe a large percentage of them are extremely young souls that just want to experience all of this so that they can take that into their next existences and learn from the mistakes and to learn from the transgressions and all of these other things. We clearly have in our lives learned from these mistakes and transgressions and violence that's been inflicted upon us, and probably violence that we've inflicted upon others. And so, but we're kind of done with it. We're finally done with the merry-go-round, with the matrix, with the game,
We don't want to buy a ticket anymore and stand in
right.
line.
You know what? You're just done with it. And it's okay, and it's okay if you're not. And I have no idea what percentage of people are still wanting to play it and what percentage of people still don't want to play it. I mean, there's clearly some souls, a specific percentage of souls that are misogynistic. They adhere to rules pathologically from our perspective. And even though World War II occurred, and even though, the National Socialism was defeated, and I use that quote unquote defeated, and even though people stood trial for crimes against humanity, and even though people's only defenses was, I was only following orders, and they were found guilty, there's a large percentage of people walking around today that never learned that lesson. Apparently, they're just following orders. They're just going with the flow. And there's a large percentage of people that fall under some kind of a hierarchy. And that's all they know. They just want to be told what to do, and they want to be rewarded for that, or not punished too severely. And they're never going to come around to the truth. They just aren't. And so I would have to consider them as agents of hindrance, and they're human like us. They just aren't ready or prepared for whatever this is that's coming, that's going to allow us to move into a higher dimensional realm or a higher resonance of truth. And again, I can speculate on what that is, but honestly, it doesn't even really matter, right? I mean, we're at the point now where they're in a reality, they're in a realm that doesn't appeal to me, nor do I think has any more value left. And so it's not, they are living in a world that I don't think has value anymore. I don't think the experience has value, not for me personally. For them, probably, I'm sure it does.
There's layers to our reality that many people don't stop to ponder or go into the muse about or seek any more information about. Like you said, they just follow orders, they follow the guidelines for human behavior, and they just do the thing. But there can be, hopefully this won't come out judgmentally, when you're just in the rote behavioral patterning, the neural grooves of the 3D matrix. That's part of that. You could be a little bit soulless. And I've, if we're talking about Satan, and I'm sure that would be a fascinating conversation, because it could get into like off-planet energy and things that invaded this realm of consciousness, right? There's also, I've seen people, and this is a whole other topic, of like non-human beings that are here, that have that ability where they aren't connected to their hearts, right? Yeah. So like the true, and I would say with a capital T, human beings, true human beings, even if they've made choices and they've hurt people, however that might have played out, true human beings have heart, have soul, have remorse, have at least, even if they've hit bottom, they actually take a turn and pivot and want to be better. They want to collaborate. They want to mend things. But there are other beings, which most people don't even have awareness of this, that our world has been influenced by off-planet galactic beings on both sides, good and bad, like light and dark forces. And we're a petri dish of that. And when that's not in people's picture, I think a lot of people can't conceive of this level of evil because human beings aren't evil inherently. But the matrix itself traps us in the soup of the manipulations and all of that. And then we think that that's normal and that's life. And, on the one hand, thank God that I have always had a sense of like, something's not right here. Like, it doesn't make for an easy experience and life path when you are awake in a matrix like this. But there's gifts in that we are meant to be living something so different. And I can't necessarily, over the decades, can't drag people along with me and force them to see more of the light or more of the potential that we all have. But I can live it. And I think in living it and in seeking truth the way that I have, you uncover all kinds of bits of information that may or may not be true with a capital T. But it's well within my seeking that I'm aware that there are probably humans and non-humans on this planet. And some are benevolent and trying to help us, and some are trying to 100% enslave us further. And that, to me, then you add in, I mean, the characters of this movie, you add Satan and Lucifer and whoever the serpent expressed and all of that. It's layers upon layers upon layers. And at a certain point, you just say, do I have to know all of the layers to set myself free? And I don't think so. I think we just have to awaken to some of the layers, like a little, thread on a sweater, and you start to unravel enough. I don't think I have to go into the deepest, like bazillions of rabbit holes to realize this is a realm that I want to ascend through my consciousness beyond. And that's the point that you're making, that some of us are ready. And I think as those of us that are comfortable saying that, really ground in that, I think you talk about, like, I think you might use the language of the righteous that are making this choice to go. I think more human beings, not talking about the non-human beings, more human beings will see that vibrational departure and want to go too. Actually, if they've been fence sitting or not taking it seriously or not having the energy to do it, they're doing it. And as I say that, I'm going to say I've been part of a group. We're all part of groups. And we're speaking about resonance, because that's one of the highest aspects of how I live my wealth now, right? Is being in resonant conversations and being in groups of people that I resonate with. I ended up leaving a group for a host of reasons. There was a catalyst, but it was really all about resonance. And as I left that group, it creates a little bit of a vacuum in the group of like, why'd she leave? It does create, like, as we do this, I'm not saying I was like the disruptor, disbander, or whatever, or the savior of that group. I was just a soul who knew that I wasn't resonating anymore. And I think more of us are choosing that, whether it's with our profession, whether it's with a relationship, whether it's with whatever it might be, even playing in the matrix anymore. We just aren't resonating anymore. We just don't even want to be a part of it. And I'm not even in resistance about it now. I just actually want to spend my time in ways that feel good. Right? And I'm speaking to that energy of, like, if there is a group of people on the planet that have been knowing more of the truth for some time, as we stop giving our energy to things just because we are going along to get along, the less we're participating in these things, and the more happens on the planet to squeeze truth into people's awareness, I think people are going to notice the people who are departing and saying, wait, I want to come, right? And I think that will capture some more people that we're not thinking are awakening to this just yet, but they will notice those who are departing. They will notice a frequency that's leaving the conversation or leaving the group or leaving the profession, whatever it might be. And that will speak volumes in our absence, because the light that was there, that was holding things together, or, still making things work, when that's gone, you have what the system is, which may be more broken than people knew when those people were still in those positions and places. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they're saying that this is going to happen in 3 waves. So there'll be 3 different, and like you're saying, there'll be a vacuum after the first wave and a vacuum after the second. The idea is that those who do make it, or who finally ascend, will still be connected to the next group that's working their way through it. And then and when that second group goes through it, then they'll still be working with the last group that's still working through it. So it's not going to happen in mass. At least that's one of the thoughts. There's also some of the sources I listen to, and they'll say, for every 3 billion humans on this earth. And I'm going, wait a minute, there's 9 billion of us, or 8 billion, or 7 billion.
Hey.
What? 3 billion? So that maybe is about a third, maybe a little less than half. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. who have the capacity
Hmm.
to be called God's children, right?
Yes.
And so the I used to give a lecture. I used to talk to students, and I used to talk about compassion, and I used to talk about holistic healing, and I used to talk about empathy, and I used to talk about how that correlates to your subtle bodies, and I used to talk about reincarnation, and I used to talk about what we actually remember from previous lives. And what we remember from our previous lives, you don't remember any of the details, but you'll remember the transgressions deep down within you. You'll remember what it felt like
To be betrayed.
when you murdered somebody,
Mm.
or when you cheated somebody, or when your child died, or when you were involved in a war, right? So just because you're not doing it in this life doesn't mean you don't know what it feels like to do these things. And that's why people lash out and they say, how could you possibly understand? You didn't lose a child. You don't know you don't know what it feels like. For spiritually aware people, for people who are who are on the verge of ascension, you certainly know what that feels like, because you've lived thousands, hundreds, if not longer, lifetimes, and you've experienced all of those things.
Yes.
And you carry that with you. You carry that in your awareness. Even if it's not in your mind, it's in your heart, right? And so you have that. And if you have a connection to your heart, then you know what it feels like. But I was always amazed that I assumed everyone knew this. I assumed everyone could connect it. But I was always amazed at how some people thought I was insane for talking about this, because it almost, in retrospect, perhaps there was a disconnection there, or there was no pathway that was developed yet.
Yes.
And there's many reasons why people go into this profession, and not all of them are noble reasons.
Yes.
And so it's quite possible that, I was just talking to people that I couldn't really connect with. And I realize that now, and that's okay. Perfectly fine. You're having your own experience, and you're going into the profession for your own reasons, which in many instances are egotistical and have been conditioned. And that's okay. And that's fine. And that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to extract myself, or move away from all of those old entanglements that I had. And I don't even know if I'll even persevere, or I'll stay in the profession. I mean, it looks like something dramatically is going to change anyway in the next few years. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, I don't really care one way or another. But that's what I think is going on. I think that there's just a lot of souls that are either young, or maybe they're not even human, in the sense of being within the templates that the human being was designed to be in. I mean, one of the things that Manly Hall said, a great esoteric scholar, he said, doesn't matter from what perspective you're coming from, all of us have within us the Christ. He said this. And maybe in a time when there were a lot less, people that were living on the physical plane, that were more misogynistic or narcissistic, or I don't know, we can call them whatever we want, but there may be some truth to the fact that they may be coming from different origins, and even then they're God's children. They're children. They're beings that we have to love, and we have to respect for who they are. But they might not be able to see the truth that we've been talking about in the same way that we can talk, or at all. That's very possible.
Right.
Right.
What we're talking about is like the layers of what we're talking about. People can zoom in and they can zoom out, and there's like such a depth to what we're speaking about. But if people have the capacity to go into the deeper energies of what we're talking about, we have the capacity to transmute this, and for those with the sight and who can be comfortable with more of the layers of what you might call darkness, of the deception, right? The things we just haven't known. But when you're exposed to some of the things that you haven't known as a possibility, whether you know it is truth yet or not, that's a different story. But even being open to truth with a capital T, to me, can indicate that there's soul light. You have a soul force inside you that will resonate with your origin, that will resonate from that which you came. Right. And I think we speak to people who will resonate with that. And people who don't, they might come for some information, but they will likely bounce out because there's nothing ultimately of substance for them, because this isn't the narrative and this isn't the frequency that they're attracted to. And I think you and I are also, we're deep respecters of people's sovereignty. And I think this last few years was a real test of that for both of us. And we've gotten better at it. We've opened wider, a greater compassion that every soul is a sovereign being that can make the choices they need for the learning path that they are on. And so I think what I love about our conversations, Paul, is there's nuggets for everyone. There's nuggets of things that people have never heard about before, even just distinguishing between Lucifer and Satan's. For some people, that might be the first time they're hearing that. It's not the first time I'm hearing it, but I definitely could stand to understand that better. And I know that in myself as well. So I'm intrigued by our conversation. And I hope people listening to this are intrigued by our conversations, because this is what a faith-filled spiritual journey is. If there's resonance, you open yourself up to peer in and to experience some of the vibrations that we're bringing to the surface today in both of the wisdom of our journeys. And then that may spark further research or further communion with source to understand it better, right? I mean, you have lifetimes of knowledge inside you, Paul. And it's always fascinating to have conversations with you, because we can go to these deeper layers where a lot of people don't want to go as deep. But I love that we do. And I hope that these breadcrumbs and these seeds that we plant for these times can help people who are still seeking to, I don't want to say, it's like my language is changing. I would have said to make sense of these times, but that's a very cerebral, left brain, mental way of making sense of these times. I think we're meant to feel these times. I think we're meant to sense these times. And I think we do that too. We bring up a lot of energy for people to feel and sense and listen for where truth with the capital T is and lowercase truth is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so going into the fall season, which we're now in the middle of, and certainly the world is in turmoil, and it may get worse, right? And so again, as I said, looking at the fall equinox and seeing, what was manifesting at exactly that moment. And I follow a real simple program, and it has algorithms. And so if it's calling the aspects, and I'm not, it's calling them. And if I see them, and I saw this, and I went, what is a Star of David, and why is it there, at that particular time? And I even looked at different time frames to see whether, because sometimes I'll run it a second time and the algorithm doesn't call it, but it did. It kept calling it.
Wow.
So it's not exactly perfectly precise, but it's close enough for it to be called. And so it's really an interesting pattern. And so this pattern is also called the Shield of David. And it's like an energy that's, like you said, that we can feel.
Feeling.
That it's a feeling, and it's been provided for us for this season, and maybe until next year. I mean, it's there. And the Star of David, as everyone knows, it's two triangles, one pointing up and one pointing down, superimposed upon themselves. But when you start looking at it, then you'll start seeing oppositions, and you start seeing kites. There's 6 kites in this thing, and there's 3 oppositions, and there's 2 trines. It's more than that. There's actually 3 trines at that moment, and there's other kites that aren't even being addressed within the Star of David. And so it's there, and it was a shield allegedly that King David carried with him as a symbol of God's protection.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So without going on all of the details of what this thing really is, because we don't know the crap that's going to be thrown up against us. They might do something. I mean, there's all kinds of chatter about, remember, well, I'm not going to talk about all the details of it, but yeah, this is a devious time of the year. And they're kind of like throwing a bunch of stuff at us to see where it sticks. And again, if you're protected within this shield, then there's no reason to number one, worry, number two, to react. You're shielded. Beautiful. And the other thing that it's exactly what it is. It's the Merkaba. It's the Merkaba that everyone talks about in 3-dimensional form. That is also our energetic shield, right? It's our energetic source, and it's our energetic shield. So it's being invoked this time of the year for us to I don't know. I think that, and I said that within the Star of David is the power of the Psalms. It's the power of the Psalms. So you read those Psalms, and most of the time, not only is it singing praise, but it's they're coming from a place of peace in many instances, and they're also invoking the presence of their godly self in these conflicts. Anyone who invokes the power of the Psalm,
yeah,
right, we're always victorious, and we're surrendering their little ego to their own divine consciousness.
Nice. I was going to share maybe towards the end, which is about where we are. Did you want to show the Star of David on the screen or no today?
So this is what we see. Let me share this. And this is what the algorithm called it. And it's not exactly in a star, but they highlight there's a kite there. There's a kite formation there. But a kite formation is based on an axis.
Yes.
An opposition. In this instance, I said moon opposite Cancer, or opposite Vesta in Cancer. And so that's a really powerful axis. And then you have two other celestial bodies, Saturn and, in this instance, Ceres, which are sextile to, in this instance, Capricorn. And so they actually potentiate or very useful or facilitate. They're very powerful energies in that right. It's almost like a trine, not quite as strong, but two of them. And so I look at a kite as something that ascends the moon in this instance into a higher perspective. So we're not looking at it from a mundane perspective anymore. We're looking at this from, yes, opposition being conflict, but in this instance, it's not on the mundane plane. It's a transitional energy. So we're looking at this as triggering. The other thing is that trines, there's a bunch of trines in this. Trines are effortless. And so now you intersect a trine, which is what a kite is, with an opposition. Now it's calling it into action. And then on top of that, in order to be successful to ascend the energy, you have those two sextiles, in this instance, Saturn and Ceres. But if you notice, on the opposite end of this opposition, there's also another kite, Mercury and Jupiter, forming exactly a mirror image. And so now you actually have, there's actually, all of these kites, all these oppositions forming the Star of David. There's no back or front to this. So it is really an interesting idea. Again, it acts as a shield. And so it's exciting to see this. I've never actually even seen one of these before. And there it is right there on the fall equinox. So there's here's a kite right here. Here's a kite right here. There's a kite here, and there's a kite here, and there's a kite here, and a kite here. So we're looking at 6 kites. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. So anyway, it's really cool. And it's there, and we can say that the heavens are empowering us, and they're looking out for us. But understand too that as we are that is who we are, and those are the light codes that are given to us constantly throughout these times.
Yes. So that's the witnessing the darkness and empowering the light. That's what we're talking about, is like
witnessing the darkness and empowering the light, or being the manifestation of the light.
Of the
right?
light. Yes.
Light is empowering us.
Right. Correct.
By witnessing the darkness, right? And being, and just being without fear, because the fear detracts from us, and it brings us into that lower perspective and that lower reality.
Exactly. Well, if I may, you include in your article the Psalm of validation. And validation in that context means what, Paul? The Psalm of validation. Is it the affirmation of your protection?
No, I'll explain it to you when you're done.
Okay. So this is the Psalm of validation that Paul includes in his September post. It says, "We walk with integrity as children of God, becoming one with your awareness. As we come to know the truth of who we really are, we become an instrument of divine will. Imbued by the Spirit, we understand all circumstances without wavering, for it is love that guides us. We are being tested and have time and again accepted the challenge, for it makes us one with the power and light of your love. It is the love of creation which resonates truthfully in our heart and mind. Through the union of soul to spirit, we are becoming one in glorious manifestations. For I see your loving devotion in my eyes and mine in yours, as we walk together in truth." As we walk together in truth, and there were capital T's throughout there.
Yeah. That actually doesn't exist in the Bible.
No? Where did you find that? Did you channel
There's
that?
something called the Psalm of Vindication.
Oh.
So it's inspired by it, but it's something that I just wrote.
Wow.
The Psalm of Validation.
Right.
I think vindication is too strong of a word now. I think we're past conflict, and we're past so I mean we need to be validated by it. Yeah. And the validation is right there in the heavens, and the Star of David. That's blessing all of us right now. So but it was definitely inspired by that psalm.
Beautiful.
And,
it is.
Maybe an angel whispered into my ear when I wrote it out.
That's what they do. That's the way they do, and we become their scribes when it's that higher life force and sight to be that. Right? It's so amazing. And so you can have I'm going to say again, people can be in a state of suffering. And in a moment, if you can center yourself with the Psalm of validation, with conscious breathing, with, knowing yourself as a child of God, or a child of God and Gaia's union, whatever it helps center you, you can be in suffering and in another breath be in grace. We can. It's something that invites us to people are, swimmers especially, or runners, it's all about fractions of a second in time, right? As to being a winner. We can shorten the distance between our suffering and our grace by practice, by spiritual fitness, exercises in spiritual fitness, and union inside of ourselves, which is mastery. And I think this fall is a call to mastery. It's a call to that union inside ourselves. It's a call to the transforming the separated parts and having compassionate eyes when we look at things around the world, which is in effect also transmuting deep suffering that is real as well. So it's a powerful time. And I'm so grateful that you joined me, Paul. I think we've kind of come to a close in our podcast. And I really appreciate the listeners tuning in And whenever we podcast, I always see some beautiful comments that it speaks to some people deeply, because I think they take some deeper dives into their journeys and their, their perceptions and their soul's experiences. And I appreciate people who maybe have never heard us podcast together before, but at least maybe are invited to a level of curiosity or intrigue about some of the things that we've spotlighted today. And so if you want to connect more with your work, Paul, because Paul goes to deep places, he really does. And you do it so brilliantly. They can find you where, Paul?
beyondthesoulsmeridian.org.
Yes. Best on your website, and can connect with you there. And so there's a deep archive of some like incredible writings where you've dug deep, deep. And you share those morsels with people like scrolls. I think there's some scrolls on your website. We were talking before we started the recording that maybe some people will find them this lifetime in our day, in the next few years even. But some might find it, 1,000 years from now and be like, wow, there was this guy writing all this incredible stuff. Right? Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
Some of us are meant to be these spiritual archaeologists or cosmic archaeologists digging deep to help humanity transcend their darkness, right? And come into the light again. And I think you're truly one of those people, Paul. So thank you. Thank you for joining me today. And thank you. Yeah. Thank you everybody for joining both of us. And you can find these podcasts certainly at Color the Magic on YouTube, or Whole Soul Mastery or Frequency Writer on your favorite social media platforms, and potentially on Whole Soul School and Foundation. And so I thank you. I thank you for journeying with us, and look for us again. Hopefully we'll have, some more podcasts in the next few months, because I think this, from now through the end of the year, this last quarter of 2023 is going to be pretty potent, as will the beginning of 2024 is a big, maybe auspicious year as well. So we'll see everybody soon. Blessings, everyone.